behind and making sure that events are announced ahead of time. Honestly, that whole doc was something that our team reviewed at length on multiple calls and then went back to the PFAA. So anything within in there, they're all no-brainers for us. There's nothing there that we're saying to ourselves, I'm not sure if we can execute this. If we committed to it, we're committing to it. And, at the end of the day, all we have is our word, and we plan to follow through on everything within that document.
Brent, what were some of the things from your perspective that you said before we even get to the second step, that these are just like the non-negotiable stuff that we got to make sure that are in here, regardless of limitations at the venue?
Yeah. No, I get the question for sure. I mean, I've gotten so deep into this that I'm like trying to, I don't know. It's like I remember everything so much, but at the same time, I went through it so many times. It's all a bit of a blur. I don't know if there was anything specifically. I think one thing was, let me look it up here. Cuts. That was kind of the big thing. Just to see, and that wasn't necessarily a deal breaker. And I feel like with this, we wanted to start with Wodapalooza. Obviously, Dylan put it aptly where they put out an olive branch. We didn't have to go begging and kicking and screaming, asking for it. He came to us first, which we're super grateful for. But it's a good partnership because we already know they run a good event. And I've had other events reach out to me asking for a partnership, and I've had to say no, at least for now, because it's like, I don't know your event. Like you might be their first go around. And I'm like, well, if all of a sudden your event's, doesn't go well, there's a specific example I could use. But if your event doesn't go well, then it shows very poorly on me. And it's like, if we don't have people there, boots on the ground, managing the whole thing, then that's going to tarnish our brand. So we have enough faith in Wodapalooza that they can deliver on that. So there wasn't really anything that was non-negotiable as far as if we don't include this, we can't work together. Because I think what you have to understand, and I think people might know this or might not, but when I go to, let's say, semifinals or the CrossFit Games or even Rogue or Wodapalooza in prior years, you're signing up, you're often paying an entry fee, $300 or so US, and they promise nothing, right? There's, you could go to, let's say Dubai or Rogue or any of those events, and they go, all right, first event's a 1 mile run. If you can't do it in under 5 minutes 30, get the hell out of here. It could be it's simple as that, right? And in a way that kind of happened at the 2019 games where everyone had already paid their tickets, and there was talks of cuts. There was an assumption there'd be cuts, but half the field went home after one event, and there was nothing written down saying that wouldn't happen. And so that's vastly changes your experience as an athlete. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what you're signing up for, is an experience. You're paying for the product, and the service is these series of events you're putting yourself through. So really it was let's just get, I came to them with just a massive list of potential things, not super well organized. Thankful to Grace on my team who organized it a little bit better, and, probably too many words in there. And then, Wodapalooza and, Dylan's team, I can't imagine how much time they spent, but going through and, okay, this is 6 sentences. Let's just condense it to one. And I didn't want to put a hard and fast thing. It's hey, as many of these that we can get in that you feel you can deliver on confidently, let's keep them in, and let's not get too wrapped up in if we take a few out. I'd honestly say, if I'd written 1,000 things, I'd say 900 made them through onto this final list. And the small ones were just wish list things. I don't even remember what they are at this moment, but eventually they'll be up there on the PFA website as sort of options for another event. It's if you're comfortable, guaranteeing this type of thing. But there were a lot that I thought were kind of wish list things that, they did put in, and, they did want to keep in, and they wanted to agree to. And, even the payout schedule, 90 days, that's huge. I mean, it's been I just got paid for semis, a couple weeks ago. Right. So I think that's a 6 month, 5.5 month turnaround. So 90 days is, huge improvement from most of the payouts I'm, expecting. And that wasn't something, it's not I put in 90 days or, the PFA team put in 90 days. It was if you're willing to some sort of payout schedule, that'd be great. And for them to commit to that is huge. And so, yeah, there's a lot of, I could go on and on.
Well, I wanted to dive into some of the specifics here, because as I was looking through this, the first thing that jumped out at me is the PFAA liaison. And I guess, Brent, we'll start with you. It's what in your mind is that person's responsibility, and how does that person deal with any sort of issues that come up in real time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, for this competition, because it's our first go around, a lot of it's just going to be fly on the wall, right? It's just going to be us being in there. By us, it won't be me. I might. I'm just doing individual this year, so on the last 2 days, maybe a little bit. But the first 2 days, it'll likely be Grace and Mitch will be there, and it's really just there. Historically speaking, there's been this a bit of a curtain between the athletes and how the events run and how decisions are made, right? This is at the games, this is at semis, this is at all the major events I've been to. So, if you file an appeal, it feels like a bit of a black box, and then they'll come back to you and they'll say, yeah, this is what we're doing. And, in some instances, at some competitions, I've felt and other athletes have felt that the rulings they make on those appeals are unfair at the live competitions. Like, they don't make sense. And there's no, they're the judge, the jury, the executioner. They make the rules, they break the rules, they follow the rules. Like, that's like the system we live in. And each event operates autonomously from every other event more often than not. And so this is kind of an opportunity for an athlete representative. Their only goal is to get in there and understand better how an event like Wodapalooza, which is run really well, how they run. Maybe that outside view can see some ways that they can streamline things, but also to come back to, the board members of the PFA like myself, and then report back to the broader group of professional athletes and make them understand how certain decisions were made, kind of improve that communication for things like appeals or like weather delays. And it's really like about creating trust. So, if there's a weather delay and, so for a road, for example, there were weather issues, weather delays, workouts were changed. And I'm under I don't believe anything was done like maliciously. And I believe that as well when it comes to appeals. But I think what sometimes happens is when there's a lack of communication, we as athletes and then also fans are left to our own devices to determine why certain decisions are made. Like, you'll see appeals or, penalties in the open, and there's these people put on their tinfoil hats, right? And they're like, this is just to help Pat Vellner get his 7th straight this, and they're shitting on this guy who no one knows about or whatever, right? You put on your tinfoil hat, and I've done that in the past too, and I realize now that I know more of the people that work at CrossFit and I know the people that work at Wodapalooza, that's not the case. Like, I really don't think it's ever the case, but if we don't have an athlete rep in there kind of better understanding what's going on, it can be challenging to build that trust. And without trust, it's hard for either of us to like make progress united together. And one of the areas that we need to make progress in, obviously safety and fairness, but like financially, is, we need the athletes to feel more bought into the process and more partners in events so we can help elevate those events. We have large social media followings. How can athletes leverage those to sell more tickets or to get more people watching the live stream? And a lot of times there's a sentiment amongst the athletes, and this isn't something that for the listener, you're never going to hear athletes specifically say this, but there are times this sentiment of like, hey, I'm going to go and compete. I'm going to take their money, but I don't particularly like those people. Like, sometimes that's a real sentiment because it feels like, especially if you've got burned in the past, and I don't think it's maliciously burned, but like things will happen. And if there's a lack of communication, it can rub you the wrong way. And then there's a lack of like trust and a partnership between athletes and event organizers. And like, I really want to break that down and improve that trust so that, it's great that we're doing this with the safety and fairness. And I think that's like a huge step in the right direction. And then kind of the next step is becoming more financial partners. And so having that liaison, they're not going to have any like real power, but it's an opportunity for them to, communicate with athletes and, kind of like be that bridge between athletes and the event. And then the athletes know that like the only reason that person is there is for the athletes. Yeah. And they're not hired by Wodapalooza. And that's kind of the difference is sometimes at some events, it's like, oh, this is your athlete communication person. It's like, yeah, but their salary is paid by the event. So when push comes to shove, who are they going to side with? They're going to side with the event every single time because that's, at the end of the day, that's who they're beholden to. So.
Right. Well, Dylan, I want to come back to this in a second, but Dylan, I want to get your take on this because I know when you guys have a really good team that runs very well, you've been together for a while, and when you sort of introduce an outside person into that who's just going to kind of be looking over your shoulder, I'm guessing maybe there's some trepidation there, but why did this make sense for you?
Yeah, frankly, there's not. And I think it's just because I think it's more just reiterating the point that we have nothing to hide. Like Wodapalooza, does things the right way and for the right reasons. And any of the decisions that we've made that have had to be difficult in the past, such as weather delays and changing workouts because of weather-related issues, they were all made with the best intentions and the best rationale based on the facts and things that have preceded it. So, frankly, I just think it was actually a no-brainer. Like I welcome them in, and it goes back to the intention of the partnership, which is to instill trust in the athletes that we're doing the things we say we're going to do and for the right reasons. Nobody from the team echoed a sentiment of that being a concern or challenge. Also, knowing that this is a step in the right direction. This, the PFA liaison is right now a concept that we're putting into execution, but how it looks at Wadapalooza this year may be very different